Hurricane Milton exits Florida, leaving a wide swath of extensive damage and tropical storm conditions for portions of the Bahamas. And friends, we're nowhere near done with hurricane season. What could be developing next week? Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. Good to see you on a Thursday. Hope you're doing well. Coming up in this video, we'll talk about what's happening with Milton and what Milton has left behind. We'll look at some active weather today, certainly for the Bahamas with impacts from Milton and across our rest of our area as well. Then we'll deep dive into the tropics, as there is more to discuss with potential development here as we get into next week. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone who joined me for our live coverage of Milton last night. As you know, if you're watching, I am a resident of Central Florida, and we're feeling some of the impacts of Milton during the live stream. We ended that coverage at around 1 a.m., but actually the weather at my house got worse during the overnight hours. I think we had some 80+ mile-an-hour winds right around 3 a.m. And when I woke up this morning, we actually did have a little bit of minor damage to the house. We have some facade that is on the front of the house, and we actually lost some of that facade. We lost a couple of pieces just like this, and this is pretty heavy. I got to tell you something. So it just goes to show you the kind of wind that we had in Central Florida to basically just rip this off the front of the house. Have been able to do most of the assessment of the home. I don't think we have any other roof damage. We didn't lose screens, but we did have some tears in our screen. There's a lot of covered patios in Florida, and we had some tears there. Haven't done the full assessment, but it's been very common. Look, that's all superficial. We're just fine. But, you know, a lot of folks that I know, they had a little bit of minor damage to the home, maybe some shingles gone. They had some tears in some of their, screens on the screened-in patios, and they had some water intrusion as well. Obviously, along the coastline, things were worse with that storm surge. But again, I appreciate everyone, who was asking, checking in on me. Appreciate you guys tuning into the live stream. We're okay, just some minor damage to handle, but we can certainly do that. Let's get into the forecast here and talk about what's been happening on this Thursday. Obviously, I do want to kind of start with what's been going on with Milton. Now, again, this storm with that wind shear that impacted it, it really came in basically as a semicircle, right? There was very little rain on the south side, but there was wind across the entire peninsula of the state. These are wind gusts in miles an hour, and we had winds clocked well over 80 miles an hour in gusts through the eastern side of the state and the central portion of the state, obviously not even where we had landfall with Milton. It's all basically gone right now, except for very breezy conditions in Florida, but it did leave some tropical storm conditions in portions of the northwest Bahamas here. You can see that Freeport late on this Thursday afternoon into the early evening hours still clocking some wind gusts nearly 40 miles an hour. Nassau has also had some winds of over 30 as well. Going to bring on the rain, and again, we were on the drier side here for the northwest Bahamas. So we had a few squalls come in, but it was really mainly about the wind that moved across the area. If you live in Walker's Key or Grand Bahama, Bimini, Abaco, down to New Providence and Eleuthera, let me know what was happening in your area here. Obviously wind-driven showers, and it really kicked up the sea conditions as well. Still a few showers spiraling back into portions of Florida, but it's nothing much. And again, already Milton is kind of beginning that extratropical transition right now. It is going to race south of Bermuda. For our friends in Bermuda, this will bring in some rough seas. It's going to bring in some quick wind-driven showers, but far enough to the south and weakening enough where I don't expect there to be extremely significant impacts. Again, on the north side, we could probably catch some winds that might push over 40 miles an hour. I'll be monitoring that as we go through our Friday and early on Saturday as well. Let's talk about what's been happening across the rest of our area. What do you say I bring on our temperatures here? Now, actually, it's been fairly quiet, fairly hot in most areas here. Take a look at the temperatures on the board. We've had some spotty showers and storms again developing. We'll start off with our friends in the Lesser Antilles right now. Bring back on our satellite data for you guys. We've got the infrared on for right now. I'll switch on over to the Viz. And we've had pockets of rain for today. It hasn't been nearly as prominent in most spots as what we've had the last few days. Tobago had a few showers, an isolated storm. You can see the lightning there. A couple of passing showers trying to develop over the southern sides of Trinidad. Barbados has still had a few showers, but there's been no active flood watch for today, so that's good news. Again, portions of Barbados have had some very heavy rain recently. Again, love to hear from you guys. If you live in this part of the world, let me know what's going on. St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. Again, few passing showers trying to actually temper the heat a little bit. We've had excessive heat watches and advisories issued for many of the areas when you haven't gotten the rain. You see Dominica there right around 93 degrees Fahrenheit for a daytime high, and just really spotty showers. It's even drier up here in the Leeward Islands, Antigua and Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Bart's, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat. Again, if you caught an isolated shower, consider yourselves quite lucky. Haven't had a lot of rain today for our friends in Puerto Rico, as well as heat advisories continue. Same thing for our friends of the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. So just a relatively quiet forecast here. I promise you this is a loop of the infrared satellite imagery, but nothing of prominence here. When I throw in the water vapor, you can clearly see that drier air has kind of snuck back in here in the shorter term. So maybe the opportunity for a few showers to develop, but nothing much. A little bit better as we get on over towards the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Few passing showers have developed. You can see a little bit of lightning strikes kind of developing on the western side of the Dominican Republic, then moving over the higher terrain and into Haiti, so near Port-au-Prince and Lacaille. We're trying to get a few showers to develop here. And if you live in the Dominican Republic, potentially a quick racing shower, that would be about it. Now, the southeast Bahamas has been relatively quiet, no real moisture developing there. We might catch a stray shower as Milton moves away and it pulls in a little bit with a southwest wind. Turks and Caicos probably too far off to the south to even get some of that. Trying to get a couple of showers moving into Jamaica right now. My friends in Kingston, Portmore, Spanish Town, Negril, Montego Bay, on over towards Port Antonio. Again, few spotty showers with this wind coming in from the east. No lightning out of any of it right now, but if nothing else, a little bit of cloud coverage, and you get a couple of showers, let me know in the comments section below. Also trying to get a couple of showers to develop over the ABC Islands. We've actually had a few showers there the last couple of days. Nothing at this point in time, but you can see the storms are building over the mainland, and some of that could trickle in. And there's even the opportunity that the best chance for rain for Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao could be tonight or even overnight and into our Friday morning. So you might wake up and could be a little bit wet outside, and that would be pretty good news. Starting to see more moisture gather back into the southwest side of the Caribbean as well. So showers are more prominent today towards Panama and Costa Rica. Scattered rain and storms for Nicaragua and Honduras. It's been drier today again for our friends in Guatemala up towards Belize and the Yucatan as well. Some of these areas, obviously, especially the northern side of the Yucatan, had been impacted by Milton, and that will no longer obviously be the case. But that being said, there's been some heavy rain and storms there, so drying out a bit wouldn't be a bad thing. Same thing for the Cayman Islands, same thing for Cuba as well, relatively isolated in nature. So again, to go back to Milton, that was the 13th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. We had this huge drought between mid-August and mid-September, and since Helene formed, we've actually rolled off 5 more named storms. So now we're up to 13 named storms for the Atlantic hurricane season. 9 of those have become hurricanes, and 4 of them have become major. I know we're probably going to get nowhere near that high end, which is great news, but we're actually creeping up on some of the lower end totals from the NOAA forecast for the season. It is still just early October, so we're just 4 named storms away from hitting kind of the lower threshold of what they expected. We're already above the lower threshold of hurricanes, and we've hit that lower threshold of major hurricanes. So despite the fact we had this drought, if you will, we've really picked things up in October, and I expect there to be pretty active tropical weather through the month as well. We'll get into that in just a second. Friends, thank you again so much for tuning into the live stream, and I appreciate all those who have reached out, who asked me how things were going. Again, being directly impacted by that storm, by being live on the stream as well, was a very interesting thing. I wish I had taken a camera and shown you the winds that I saw at 3 a.m. because they were much more than what we had during the live stream, but there you go. Thanks for liking. Thank you for subscribing, all of our new subscribers, all of our new members, and I appreciate you guys finding ways to support us here at Meteo Mundo. All the new members, the super thanks. You can find the descriptions to the links for the PayPal and the Venmo below as well. I do want to take one other second and talk about Milton, and that's the fact that we discussed how the track was a little bit uncertain, but can you believe this? From the very first advisory of Milton, 4 days out from making landfall, the hurricane center was actually just 12 miles off of where it actually made landfall. Remember, that first track had it right over Tampa Bay and actually moved over Sarasota just 12 miles away. They were only 15 miles off from the first advisory of Helene. So you want to talk about, again, really getting some precision when it comes to tracking. We're really seeing that. The intensity is another thing. We continue to have issues with that because we continue to have storms that are very, very strong and rapidly intensifying. The models just simply can't handle that right now. Let's talk about the short-term forecast, then we're going to look at the tropics, okay? Over the short term, we're not going to have any tropical development through the weekend into early next week, but I'm talking about Monday, Tuesday. Now, we do have Leslie, again, fish storm moving away. It'll kind of lead Milton off towards the northeast Atlantic. We do have another invest here, potentially could be developing, but it's going to be gaining far enough latitude quick enough. I don't expect that to be a big issue for our part of the world. So let's get back into what I do expect to be happening here over the next few days. Look, we're still going to have spotty showers over the Lesser Antilles for the next couple of days. There's nothing very concentrated, no real big shear axis or no big tropical wave coming through. So these will be isolated island showers. You'll catch some heavier rain from time to time. There'll be many dry hours and locations, but there's just nothing prominent here, right? So spotty rain, perhaps a little bit more moisture down towards Trinidad and Tobago, SVG, and Barbados, maybe as far north as St. Lucia, with a little bit of moisture coming back up from Central America. Places like Suriname and Guyana will have a little bit better chance for showers. Same thing for Venezuela, and that could bring a few showers towards Nueva Esparta. Also could see a couple of showers over the ABC Islands, again, at least through tomorrow. So it's good to be talking about a little bit more rain for these islands on Friday. Do think we'll get some drier air to come back in Saturday and Sunday, not completely dry, but a slightly better chance for our Friday. Rain chances should begin to improve starting late tomorrow and especially Saturday and Sunday for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Still could be pretty dry for Friday. Watch out for the heat, friends. Feels like temperatures in some spots approaching 110 Fahrenheit. That's 43 degrees Celsius, but we'll try and get you some more showers to cool things off in the afternoon for places like Ponce and San Juan, St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John, and our friends in the British Virgin Islands, including the Road Town area. A little bit higher concentration of rain for the Dominican Republic and Haiti, but it's still, again, not a big concentration. So Santo Domingo, Punta Cana, Puerto Plata could go the next few days with very little shower activity or nothing at all. But spots of heavier rain could produce some localized flooding in a few areas. But generally speaking, we're doing all right here. Now, rain chances should be a little bit higher in Jamaica starting late into the weekend. Still pretty spotty Friday, Saturday, but you can see the moisture building off to the south as we get into Sunday. And that will begin to move back into Jamaica probably Sunday, and then even higher rain chances early next week. So again, for Kingston and Mandeville, Savlamar, Ocho Rios, places like that, it's 20 to a 30% chance the next couple of days, and then look for higher rain chances Sunday and into the weekend. And the reason why is we're starting to see that Central American gyre, the monsoon trough, which is prominent in Central America this time of the year, kind of flare back up. Basically, it tracked north as Milton developed. And again, it wasn't even directly tied to Milton. That was the old Tropical Depression 11E off the Pacific, which really spun up Milton in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. But the moisture that came up from the Caribbean also aided in some of that as well. Well, guess what? The Central American gyre is going to be kicking back in here, and now rain chances go back up for all of Central America. And again, the inherent rotation of the spin will cause us to have to keep a very watchful eye on what may be happening there by mid next week. That's going to throw more moisture into the Cayman Islands eventually. Going to obviously throw more moisture over Quintana Roo as well. Cuba will dry out a little bit over the Bahamas the next couple of days, but you can clearly see again that moisture feed begins to move right back over the Bahamas beginning Sunday and into Monday. So from Freeport to the Abacos and Bimini and Nassau, New Providence and Eleuthera, Andros, Exuma, Cat Island, Long Island, Crooked Island, back down to the Acklins as well. Better rain chances begin to come back up. Now, obviously, too, for our friends who are boaters, watch out for the sea conditions to be pretty rough the next couple days. I'll show you that coming up in just a minute. Let's look at the rainfall totals here again over the next 7 days. And if you look back to Central America, you will clearly see what the Central American gyre is going to do. Watch those rain chances or the rain totals really expand, and especially by mid to late week. This is next Thursday, so this is basically 7 days out, a full 7 days. And look at this wide swath of 2, 3, 4, maybe even 6 inches of rain. That's 50 to 150 millimeters of rain. It encompasses the central and the western Caribbean through the Bahamas. It's going to start to get wet again. It doesn't really get going until Sunday, but most of next week is going to be wet. It's going to be stormy and potentially seeing some tropical development in that area. As I mentioned for my friends in the Bahamas, watch out for the offshore waters of the exposed areas of the Atlantic, especially on the eastern side. And there you go again, right? You can see this is Milton pulling away. And so we have these winds swinging back out of the northeast for the Bahamas and the Turks and the Caicos, even the northern side of the Greater Antilles. And then as we get into next week, the winds freshen right back up here in the Western Caribbean. And that's what we have to talk about when we're looking at the tropics. So let's do that right now. We'll take a look at the GFS model first. We'll take a look at some of the ensembles. Again, in the short term, we're looking okay. No development tropically for our entire area is expected through the weekend. But the same area that we watched kind of where Milton and Helene tried to form is exactly the areas we will be monitoring. This is the GFS deterministic model. You can clearly see as we get into mid next week, next Wednesday and Thursday, we start to try and spin up another system here in the Western Caribbean. Certainly going to be a potential heavy rainmaker for portions of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands in Central America and the Yucatan and Cuba, maybe back building into the Dominican Republic and Haiti and eventually to the Bahamas and the Turks and the Caicos. But we do have an active spin here that again is going to be trying to lift north and get back into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's what it looks like on radar. This is what it looks like here. These are your surface winds out of the GFS model. It'll take just a second to load up here, but you'll clearly see that on the GFS, we start to get something trying to develop of a tropical nature by mid next week. Again, it'll take just a second for it to fully load up. If you're looking at the purples, those are going to be winds of over 20 miles an hour. Then we get to the pinks, we get to the whites, and those are 30, 35. And then we start to talk about, the potential for tropical depression winds, even into tropical storm winds. But clearly at the end of this model over 7 days, you'll start to see the consolidation of the winds at the lower levels of the atmosphere. So as it typically is, starts out very broad on the eastern side of that Central American gyre, and then begins to wrap up. And this is what it looks like next Thursday morning. And again, if we query these winds on the GFS model here at the end, you'll start to see some winds that will get close to tropical depression or even tropical storm status, right? So the opportunity on the GFS model that we're going to have a depression or tropical storm by the mid to end of next week here in the western side of the Caribbean. Elsewhere, there might be a little bit to watch out for here. The GFS model doesn't have it as prominent, but you can see that there's a very large wind field. And again, both Leslie and Milton will be well away. These are just current positions, but this would be another area to monitor, and I'll show you that on the European model. So let's look at the GFS ensemble first. Again, I'll put myself back on camera. Why not? Through weekend, we're just fine. Everything is quiet, beginning as early as Tuesday, but especially Wednesday into Thursday. Here are your ensemble members of the GFS. Again, trying to wrap up a storm in the Western Caribbean. Now, we don't want to go any farther than that as to where it could go from there, but obviously a general direction to the north or to the north and west is likely. And if we do get a storm to wrap up here, we would obviously have more impacts on the Caribbean first. That's down the road, but this is going to be an active time of the year, and the GFS model is picking up on another storm here less than a week away. If we look at the European model, you're not going to really see a lot of development here in the Western Caribbean. So that's good news. The global models aren't fully with each other as far as completely developing this. You can see that on the European model here. We'll pause it right at the end. You don't see much, do you? But I do want to note the European model takes that area that I showed you east of the Lesser Antilles and does try and develop a little bit more. And some of the ensembles are trying to pull a storm closer to the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the Dominican Republic and Haiti by the end of next week. So it's interesting, the European model is more clinging on to this in the Atlantic development region, the basin, and not having so much in the Western Caribbean, whereas the GFS is flipped. It has more development here in the Caribbean and doesn't really pick up on that Atlantic development, at least as of yet. that's obviously something to monitor as we go through the week. Friends, again, I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for all the support. We're not just on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video, and I do appreciate those who took time out, who were directly impacted by Milton, but still sent me some pictures and video, mymeteomundo@gmail.com. Again, anyone who's been impacted by Milton, our thoughts are with you guys. Hope the damage was minor. Hope it's things that you can quickly move on from. Appreciate all the support again. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing. I'll be back tomorrow with the latest forecast for you right here at Meteo Mundo.